Right, thanks for everyone. My name's Ross. I'm the chairman of Hive Business. We're here today. I'm actually really delighted with this new format. We're here for a panel discussion to discuss what I believe is one of the really major existential issues that we're observing and seeing in dentistry at this moment in time. So it's about the growth culture of your organization, or maybe the lack of it, or the difficulties that you're finding with it. But yeah, we believe this is kind of real silent assassin in a significant number of businesses at the moment, and it's something that as experts we can kind of observe from the outside, but obviously kind of integrating that into execution and getting better outcomes is what I'm hoping we're going to hopefully unpack a little bit here today. So yeah, really grateful to have attendees here that I'm essentially forced to turn up today, but we've got Dan, who works alongside me with a business consultancy in Hive. We've got Luke, who's the MD of Hive Marketing, and we've also got the amazing Tracy Stewart from MVS Training. Thanks all for turning up, everyone.
Yeah.
What do you see what do you see happening at this moment in time, Dan?
Um, well, it's the same thing that's kind of been happening. So I've been in dentistry for 12 years. So the principles of how to develop a dental business are kind of exactly the same. They're just more real now. So the way I might look at it is when I first got involved in dentistry, you could do one or two things right and get a disproportionate reward for it. So, for example, if in 2015 you invested in Google advertising and invested in SEO, the return was pretty quick. It didn't really require you to change your business too much to capture that return, and it would significantly grow and add value to your practice. What's happened, particularly over the past 5 years, is it's no longer good enough just to do the two things right. You're trying to get that kind of 8 out of 10 mark to actually get the returns. So broadly speaking, there's still the same amount of people searching for dentistry in the UK, so the demand is there. It's just the consumer is much more discerning, much more informed, and we all know what it's like now. You actually think twice before any purchase you make at all, even kind of from getting a coffee in
Mm.
town to the kind of more significant purchases of dentistry.
Well, I think that's kind of, certainly one of my motives, one of the motives for even kind of talking about it today is that there's this financial pressure. I mean, like we're really seeing it. It's just, I suppose, that whilst accountants will view it through the lens of numerical and profitability and P&Ls, you, Dan, might observe it in terms of what's happening within a practice. Tracy, I'm sure you've got your own perspective on what you're seeing, but I suppose everyone's kind of vocalizing some form of pressure. But is there kind of an uncertainty of where to turn, Tracy?
Thing is, I don't think it's changed too much, as in everyone's still looking for the quick fix, but I think the quick fix is marketed more.
Yes.
So everyone kind of thinks it's more possible. So, for example, you'll see things like 1,000 leads, and people are going, "Oh, I'm going to get 1,000 patients," and we know that's not how it works. But some people are very good at marketing, and therefore the person that's actually investing into this may think they're going to get 1,000 leads. It's no different to me joining up on one of the online dating sites and actually putting my £20 in the kit and thinking I've got potential 50 amazing husbands, and then there's the real world that we need to join into. And again, I was in a meeting with the group of dentists yesterday, and one of the things that we were talking about is it's really demoralizing for the reception team or the TCO team, because they are following up these patients and they're following them up as quickly as they can. But what they're not realizing, because they didn't understand how it all works, and their boss doesn't understand how it works, is somebody might be on a train in London and their adverts popped up or their landing page has popped up, but actually they're making their way back to Ireland. So they're now following up this lead and they get told, well, I'm not in your area. Well, it's no different. I'm going to Leeds next week and I might actually follow an advert, and then, this amazing potential husband might pop up in Ireland, and it can get then quite, I've paid me 20 quid. Why is this amazing husband in Ireland, not in Cornwall? So,
Yeah.
it is about people understanding how it works. And then from my side of things, We then got to overcome the behaviours and the habits to get the team to perform, because it's no different to a football team. If your team's not going to perform, then you're not going to win the championships.
I'll kind of select something you said at the start of that, which I think actually kind of really profound, is that, if we've got a marketing agency or even your kind of your brand position generating, let's say, 1,000 leads. I think there's this kind of, we're all positive human beings. We want to believe that every one of those is a potential candidate. Actually, sometimes we turn up believing and expecting those 1,000 leads to turn into 1,000 clients. But like, I know it's perhaps saying the obvious, but what's the difference between 1,000 leads and turning it into a booking? Because they're not the same thing, are they?
Well, no, because it's just going to give you an opportunity, and it's how you're actually going to manage that opportunity. So I'll give you another example. Last Sunday, I downloaded a price brochure, if you like, of wedding cards at 9:30. At 9:34, my phone was ringing, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know the number, so I'm not going to answer it. I certainly don't want it to be a client ringing from a private number just to get me to bloody work on a Sunday. And then I actually got an email, which I could see come from a CRM system. But the fact is, it's speed. So the thing is, people really need to be working a lot more closely with the marketing agency, because, things are going out, let's say on a Friday, but there's not going to be anybody there to pick it up. Then they're going to lose it because they haven't actually replied with the speed. It's nothing to do with the landing page or the advert or the message that's gone out there. I would say 9 out of 10 clients I work with, I've had a conversation outside of working hours. And that is the world that we're living in now.
Yeah, you're not competing with other dental practices. You're competing with Amazon, where you can broadly buy anything and it be at your house the next day. I think I've told you this before, Tracy, the sushi in the sun story. So if I get a delicious piece of sushi, put it out in the sun for you. If you eat it right away, it's fantastic. If you wait an hour, it might taste a bit weird. If you wait 24 hours, it'll send you to the hospital. Now, that is the same as a lead that hits your dental practice. The time of when you follow up that lead has a drastic impact on the outcomes that come there. So I know, worked with a lot of agencies and obviously worked very closely with Luke. And we kind of know if there's like 100 inquiries hitting a practice and the front desk is saying, everyone's saying we're too expensive. We know the problem isn't they're too expensive. It's something else. We don't actually know what it is, but it's deeply unusual if that's the trend, or if 100% of people didn't answer the phone or aren't interested. There's something else going wrong, and it's something to do with eating that sushi at the wrong time.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of launch off what you're saying there, Dan, like I think again, it's almost inconceivable to actually, again, it is a natural reaction as a human being, but there's a belief that those 100 leads, or whatever the number is, always were going to end up being 77 that kind of attended the practice. I think what you're saying is you can have the same 100, and the way you deal with them can be the difference between 77 and 33.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, Luke, how we often it's very, very difficult and sometimes thankless to work with clients, and sometimes you've listened to calls and kind of fed back on them. How are you finding it working with clients, getting them to engage with the leads more? Now there is unquestionably more demands on the practice to get the most from their marketing system.
I think it's about evidencing in the best way where they're failing, or where things can be improved. The marketing is often as good as the team that is behind picking up on the leads, but it's also a lot of the companies or agencies out there are pushing a lot of social media advertising as well, which is really good. But often you're providing a lead contact rather than a direct inquiry via a phone call. So it's trying to get your blend of marketing right, so you're getting a good volume of calls that can be answered in a timely fashion, and the client is getting their response or finding out about service or booking in at that moment. And then another portion of them that are submitting a form inquiry that the practice has to follow up. Now, if all 100 of those leads are forms that people are following up on, of course, your conversion rate is going to be lower, even if you've got great systems in place. So it's getting that blend right. So you're getting a mixture of phone calls and follow-up forms across your services as well. We generally find that pricing is not that much different across platforms and or across practices, providing unless they're running a special offer, usually for Invisalign or some smile makeover service. But it is about speed of response is really good. But as Tracy will no doubt say, it's about the variation in your type of response as well. So phone call is great as your first point of contact, but there are many other methods to do that. Making sure if you're using a CRM system that you have got nurture sequences in there, but particularly first line responses, that acknowledgement that that you, Tracy, that you got for your wedding card inquiry, then people know you've got it and you will be in contact. Even if you're saying when you'll be in contact, people are then at ease and may not be looking elsewhere saying, oh, this practice is useless, they haven't called me back. Those subtle, soft forms of communication are very powerful. And then following up when you say you're going to. You know, we do have practices that will fill in their CRM system and say, I did follow up on the call. And part of the process we go through often is mystery shopping, just to see if people are doing what they say they're doing. And there's often a mismatch with saying, I contacted this lead at this time. And we know they didn't make any attempt. So it's just setting some good targets, making the team aware of why you're doing it, the cost of an inquiry, the cost of marketing, and measuring performance from there.
I like that kind of mismatch element as well, because it's something that we observe all the time. So let's kind of go back to these theoretical kind of 100 leads. You know, you might be saying, for argument's sake, you know, our kind of digital tracking methods have showed we've kind of thrown 100 leads at the practice. What do the practice often kind of say? Do they kind of shake your hand and say, yeah, totally, you know, we've got those 100 leads, we're taking care of them, you know, they're in a process, away we go? I kind of know the answer already.
Unfortunately, that's not often the case. But the high performing, high functioning practices will have a record of who has converted, and we're able to go back on. And from my perspective, that's really important, because that conversion information, who has converted, what number, what lead, if it's a message, that all goes back into the campaigns, because we campaigns have moved on so much. It's about data management and where is that lead, and from that inquiry we can go back into the systems and know what kind of what their profile's like, what their location is like, what their interests may be like, and refine and get more people of the same. So it's really important, but there is a lot of gaps in there, and you're not going to reach everyone. I mean, the expectation that I'll contact every 100 that comes through is not going to happen. But there are outliers out there. Talking to some CRM platforms that are converting 70-80%. The average is about 35 to 40%. The lower performing ones will be, you know, sub 30. If you're,
I was going to say, yeah, well, and we see this, you know, when we start to kind of unpick practices, the ratio seems to be kind of fairly universal when we're helping with a practice that's maybe under some pressure, which is the ratio of 7 to 1. So put that in context. You know, the marketing agency will be saying, we believe we've got kind of 70 leads here, and the internal systems in the practice will say, no, I don't agree with that, it's 10. So like that's a massive gap to be kind of bridging there, Luke, isn't it? It's like, and do you get blamed for that? Is it an internal thing? Is it an external thing?
Yeah, we'll say, I mean, the first point will be the marketing's not working. What are you doing? It's not working. But it is a relationship. It is about the feedback that we get, we can use to refine campaigns, as well as the feedback that we can give to practices on how to improve performance. It's a two-way street. And if you get that right and have, it's about building trust with an agency, because there is always refinements that can be done both sides. If you have that in place, that's when you start seeing some gains.
Well,
Tracy,
sorry, Ross, cut across you there. The marketing might not be working. That's the point. That's exactly what we're trying to establish. So it's that feedback loop. But there's a thing that I'm not sure many people are aware of, that they kind of you manifest the future you want. And I feel that there's, whether or not it's conscious or subconscious, there's often a feeling within the practice that they don't want the marketing to work. And that's not just with us. It's like they don't vocalize it. They've had one, spent one afternoon calling up leads and they didn't get anyone booked in. They're going, this is a waste of time. Marketing doesn't work. And then every one of their behaviors following that kind of makes the marketing not work, if that makes sense. So
it becomes a cultural thing as well, isn't it? If you're setting that tone within the practice, it spreads very quickly to a very negative point of view on marketing. I think when we start campaigns, we try and work very closely with them, sharing the information, making sure things are working, trying to adjust to improve performance. Other times it works really well straight off the bat, but it's not just, oh, here's your lead and then everything should work smoothly. That if it did, that would be the most, it would be fantastic.
Right.
I'd be really happy, but it's very rare. It has to be two-way street to understand it. And some practices are right. Straight off the bat, they'll be going, no, this is not working, but it does take time. Data takes time to accumulate, to understand, to be able to optimize. You can't run off 10 inquiries. You do need 100 to see what the trends and patterns are.
Yeah. Could I ask you very quickly there? You mentioned slightly earlier on about kind of social media, and I think you're alluding to the kind of the quality that brings. But I'd like to kind of just pick that apart, because I think there's a belief that a lead is a lead.
Yeah.
What's the difference between social media and something else?
I would like the way I try to explain it nowadays is there is a very big difference between a leads that you're pulling through to the practice. So that might be someone who is looking on Google, their intent is slightly higher, their motivation is higher, they're in the market for a service or for information about a type of treatment. That lead is often an easier conversion. They might phone the practice directly from a Google search, from a local listing or organic or Google ad. When you're looking at social media, and this is not knocking social media, I think it's a really good platform, but it performs a different function. So you look at it, if you're, I kind of compare it to TV advertising or radio advertising now, which is where you're broadcasting out that you are a practice, you deliver this service, you deliver these great results, you've got lots of trust from patients. Would you like to make an inquiry? Now, not all of that audience are in the market at that time, but they might have an interest that you've triggered. So they're going to be a harder person to reach. You've also got to reach them because they're not going to be phoning you. They're going to be saying, yes, I am interested. Can you call me? So there is a difference, but it's volume from which you get good inquiries, but there's just a lot more to sift through to get to. So you're pushing out your brand, your practice to that audience where you're pulling in an interested audience from different platforms. Get that blend right, and you can get a really good you can get a satisfying conversion rate.
Yeah. So Dan, for example, if you hear a dental practice owner say, you must use social media or Instagram or just do this or XYZ, like, what are you thinking? Like, are they true? Are they lying? Are they?
Yeah, I don't blame the dentist, and I don't actually blame the market but it is, people are looking for simple answers. If there's ever like just do this, it's probably not very good advice. It's like, if you're going to commit to this, it's going to be very expensive to acquire it. So and no, you're going to have to change your business to meet these new style of inquiries. So I was actually going to ask Tracy, because I feel like your first step as a principal is almost to get a sales champion in the business. So that might be your TCO, but it could be anyone, to be honest, that's just curious about the leads and is going to see what happens to all of the leads. So things I try and get people to do is just send a voice note at close of play on Friday, summarizing what's happening with the leads, and then maybe attaching some stats to it. So you're consciously trying to have this culture of thinking about the leads and trying to figure out how we make the leads work for us. But as you know, I'm quite hands-off with working with the team in the practice. Tracy, you're obviously much more have much more impact on the operations of the business. Is that something you actively do, or does it kind of organically flow out when you're working with them?
So the first thing is, I would say, coming back to something that Luke said, with recording the calls and things, first of all, there's no quality assurance checks. Nothing comes out of a factory without anybody having any quality assurance checks. you're checking the quality of your dentistry, but you're not checking the quality of what communication's going out of your practice. Yeah. So whether it happens to be an email, whether it happens to be a telephone call, whether it happens to be WhatsApp, text, or voice note, somebody needs to actually be checking that. And that's where I tend to come in with practices, because everything's kind of copied into me. So I'm going into a meeting after this later today, and a practice was already sent me over their yellow sticky. That's the notes they've taken from the call. I've got the notes from the actual referral that was made from the practice. And that could take us in another conversation, because the quality of what is happening within the clinician's communication is another area. So your receptionist can get the patient through the front door, but your clinician could be letting them out the back door. So I've got my yellow sticky, I've got the notes from the actual referring dentist, and then I've got the recording. And the team would have actually heard that, they would have listened to that, they would have actually made their own notes on what it is that they've identified. You know, we've got practices going from sort of a 40% conversion rate into high 80s. We've also got a team that really wanted to punch my lights out and throw tomatoes at me, and only ended up doing what I asked them to do, because they wanted to prove a point that I was wrong and they were right. But thank the Lord, they did do what I asked them to do. And, you know, they're happy as Larry now, because their boss is walking in with a smile on their face and go, do you know what? I've got an amazing team here. And they're loving, you know, the interaction between them and the patients. You know, one of the actually implantologists had a 20-minute conversation about beef and onion crisps, because that led to the loss of a tooth. And you've got other people in the practice that are going, oh, what a load of nonsense. That's not going to make any difference. You know, but it's whether it's online dating, or whether it's asking for a hair appointment, or dentistry, or recruiting even, it's your interviewing techniques. Yeah. It's asking the right questions, and not because you want to push a sale, but you want to understand that person. And you can't convince somebody to do something, but they can convince themselves. And that comes down to, you know, I find that practices are very informative. We'll talk about the process, we'll talk about the costs, but they're not actually allowing the patient to talk about the thing that they're most interested in, and that's themselves.
Yes,
Can I just take an acid test there, Tracy? And again, please don't punch my lights out. But how convicted are you in believing that it's this perhaps peripherally perceived stuff that makes a difference? Can't I just do my dentistry, and won't that be okay?
No, because people buy people. People buy people they like and trust. And unless you've got, it's a bit like at the moment, I'm hearing a lot with, oh, let's just get the TCOs, let's get more TCOs, because, you know, the dentist needs a bit more help. No, the dentist is just not performing. Okay. Your associate is not having that conversation. So, okay, if we're going to actually grow this TCO, and your clinician is on a certain percentage, and they're not actually doing what they should be doing, well, let's take part of that percentage and let's give it to the TCO, because they're doing the job that your clinician should be bloody doing. And good.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have a dentist. I was talking to a client last week, and they have an Invisalign dentist that works in probably about 5 to 6 practices. And that Invisalign dentist has said, you know what, I love working at this practice because I have my highest conversions there for Invisalign treatment. And it's because they've got every stage of their process working really well, and how they interact, and a high performing dentist who converts. But that patient's been set up for when they reach the dentist, who then, it makes her job easier, happens to be really good at conversion anyway, and a great dentist. But it all flows through. And it's from start to finish that patient's getting a wonderful experience and result.
I just want to say, and I'm not saying that the TCOs, you know, are not needed. You know, they're worth their weight in gold. But for example, if you're looking at the yellow sticky or the call recording, if that's not then actually being shared, you know, if that baton's not being passed on, then you've already dropped the baton.
Well, I think one thing, there's definitely, when we first went into lockdowns, I spoke with way more dentists than ever, because everyone was scratching around, ourselves included, to figure out what was going on. There was definitely a kind of archetype of some dentists that were saying, look, I'm just going to put my head down and do dentistry. I was around in 2008. That's what I did, and it was a rough few years. Then it came good. I think that was probably okay for a couple of years, but now it's not okay. You know, minimum wage has gone up. Everything's more expensive. You have to be running a business now. It's not an optional thing to start doing this, and you can't abdicate it now as well. So you can, you know, you might have a manager who's more like a more people centric than you are, but you do have to be a leader in that business. So Tracy, do you like coach people on? So people with like, so say a principal says, right, we're investing in this new marketing system, we're expecting to get 100 leads a month. It's really important we do our best to convert them, track them, and figure out what's working and what isn't. Do you find your clients are good at then taking the next step of telling the team why it's important for them personally? Like, for example, if the business has to grow for everyone to get paid more. So if we can figure out how to convert these new patients coming in, it will literally mean more pounds in your pocket as a member of staff. Worked with hundreds of dentists. Everyone would like to pay their staff more and like to be more generous. There's just not very much money in these businesses anymore. So it's like, do you find that they're good at that, or it's something that you kind of walk them through doing? Because I think once that clicks in a team, that actually if we all pull together in this, it's good for everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but it's not a quick fix, okay? It takes 12 months. So initially, when I start working with a team, it's not uncommon for me to actually turn up, and I might say to the team, so, you know, what have you been told about today and what we're going to do? Oh, I just saw that your name was in the diary and I wasn't too sure if you were a patient or what was going on.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is no, it isn't generally communicated to the team. And this is what we work on. So when I go into a practice for the first 2 days, which would be consecutive, the first day I'm just going in as a visitor and I'm sticking my nose in everything. I'm not charging somebody for a discovery report like other people would do. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but I'm literally there as a visitor and just seeing what's going on, sitting on the consultations, sitting in on new patient examinations, looking at what kind of communications going on between the practice owner and the manager. So really looking at everything. Then day 2 really starts off with understanding ourselves better. Do a lot of things around personalities and resistance. So if you think of things like you listen to any coaching podcast, it would be, as human beings, we're very used to answering questions, 2 + 2 = 4 or whatever it may be. But what we're also not thinking about, most of us has also been brought up with, one of our parents or both of our parents saying it's rude to ask questions. So we have a fixed belief in our head and our brain's trying to keep us safe. And then somebody like me turns up and says, well, you need to ask these questions. And someone's gone, jog on, Jimmy, it's not going to happen, because they can't even tell me why it's wrong, but they've got this belief. So whether you have a belief in Father Christmas or a belief in a particular religion, you've got to actually allow that person to actually make their own mind up. And it's about making, putting them in a safe place and making it easier. And if they understand, there's a benefit to the patient, because most of us want to help other people. So if it's not about sales and pushing people and pulling them through the door, but actually you could actually change somebody's life, and you could actually help that. And the dentist might do some amazing dentistry, but the only reason that person is in a much better place in their life is because how that TCO or that receptionist actually engaged and nurtured that relationship.
Yeah, I think with from a marketing perspective, what we'd like to communicate is trust and empathy and transformation, and that's often the messaging that will appear on a lot of our marketing material. And if that is not relayed or matched when the person talks to the practice, then they're already on the back foot. It just doesn't work. That empathy has to carry through the whole journey, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm kind of actually listening, and I think it's got to a nice. We've kind of unpicked quite a lot actually in there already, and I think I'm kind of looking at both Luke and Tracy. Like, it sounds quite complicated in a way. So Luke, I feel a lot of people would say, can I just give you some money and you generate leads? And Tracy, I think a lot of people would look at you and say, cool, like, can't we just get our TCO, our receptionist, our nurse to do what we ask them to do? But is it more complicated than that? Oh, Luke, I'll come to you first.
It is more complicated because when we look at I need more leads. Well, what type of leads do you want? What are your issues? Where do you want? Which diaries do you want to fill? To work out what the plan is and what the best route is to get that, because it may not be the same for everything. Or what's your budget? How much can you spend? And when we explain what are, we run campaigns up and down the country and have done for, as dancers up to 12 years. We know how much it costs to get a client in or to get that inquiry in. And if we can make the most of the budget to provide the right type of lead, if everyone says, right, I just want Invisalign leads, I'd probably say you probably need some more different types of leads as well, general inquiries. Are there any other treatments? Because you need that blend to get the wins as well. It would be a really hard angle to go if you were just following Invisalign, because a lot of people are price checking, lots of people are looking for offers. They're less motivated and there's lots of competition. Where if you can spread your budget across a number of different platforms and treatment varieties and display the trust that you have with your current patients and the outcomes, that will give you a better result. So it's trying to understand a bit more about the practice, asking questions to devise a plan. We don't just say, right, we promise you this many leads in this treatment. It's trying to get the best result for the client.
Like, ironically, I suppose what I'm listening to you saying is, you're articulating it's not complicated as such. It's just not, you can't abdicate the problem. So
Yes,
it sounds like you've got a
simple, not
well-trodden path.
easy. Like it's kind of simple at the headline terms what you've got to do. It's very hard to execute. It's, I was speaking to another chap who does NLP coaching, and I was saying that I still hear quite a lot. People are saying, well, I pay my team. Why don't they just do what their job is? And it's like, we kind of, there's a knowing look around all of us because it doesn't work that way. So there's kind of no, I really think there's no ability to abdicate anymore. I think we were meeting with a really good chap yesterday who was saying almost his success in dentistry early on came through luck. And I know what he means. Like, he actually chose a really good industry in a time when it was booming, whereas now he's really trying to figure out how to put his kind of business disciplines in place to go to the next level. So yeah, it is really complicated, but it is having a business. Having a business is complicated, and if you want to engage with that chaos and if you're going to enjoy it, there is a pathway to deal with it, I suppose. But it's there will be someone out there who will say, if you pay me and do these 5 steps, everything will be all right. Unfortunately, that's not true. It might make you feel good for making that decision, but probably the reality is you having to speak to all 4 of us at different times and other people as well to figure out how to solve your complicated mess that is any business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you led off, Tracy, by saying it's kind of a 12-month kind of pathway with it. So, there are really quick fixes that you see internally, Tracy, I assume.
Yeah, the quick fixes don't work. Even if somebody came onto one of my workshops, they're only going to take away what they like. They're not going to take away what they don't like, because change is hard for everybody. And ultimately, that's what I'm doing is, helping people move towards making that change. And it's overcoming that fixed mindset. Now, I can't do what I do without the likes of Luke and a decent marketing agency, because I don't generate the leads. So it's about, working together. And as I think Dan said, it's partnering with, different people who specialize in different things. And, to kind of paint a picture of what change looks like. We just kind of think, well, we're going to do something different. I'm paying you enough money. Why can't you just get on and do it and stop being so annoying? Why are you resisting everything? But have you tried changing your car from a handbrake that you pull up from the floor to a button that you're hoping to God is going to hold you at the highest hill in Cornwall? It's, there is a little voice in your head going, it's not going to work, it's going to crash, it's going to roll down. And you know what? The minute that you have that fixed belief and you press the button and your car goes back a little bit before it goes forward, you've convinced yourself it's not going to work. It's no different to that little voice in the cupboard that's telling you that, you know, you need those 10 Mars bars and 2 bottles of wine or whatever it may be. You know, I remember when last year when I did my first 10K, and, you know, the only reason I actually turned up on the day is because for one reason or another, I told all my clients in the WhatsApp group that I was going to do it. So I literally couldn't back out, otherwise I would. And it got to the last sort of bit, and I noticed that all the fit runners were starting to walk, and I thought, wow, you know, if they're still going to get a badge for actually walking the last bit, I will. And there was this little 3-year-old on the side, and I had this orange top on, and she went, "Lady in orange, don't give up, keep going." And that little voice went, "Oh, bloody hell, I'll have to keep going because I can't let a 3-year-old down." And it is mindset, and it's that little voice and being able to overcome it. And unfortunately, at the moment, there is no magic quick fix pill that's going to be able to do that for you.
No, I think what we've really kind of discovered today is that the word "just" is like a toxin, isn't it? It's a kind of a great big signpost and a warning siren that you're maybe approaching things. All we're really concerned about is kind of getting better outcomes for dental practice. I will say that, like, the reason we're all sat here is because we want dental practice to succeed. You know, we've had national minimum wage increased by about 40% over the last 5 or 6 years. That has lifted like a rising tide that hasn't receded the cost base of all dental practices. So, yeah, our combined kind of contributions today are you know, are just so that people get better outcomes. I use the word "just" then, so I'm very sorry about that. But what we want is we all want to combine. So I think I'll wrap that today if that's okay. You know, I really appreciate Luke, thank you, Tracy, thank you, and Dan, thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.